maybe just before you go, for for people that are unaware of the actual mesh itself, the difficulties in removing the mesh. Do you want to explain that the skin grows through the mesh and the difficulty of actually removal?
Well, there are various different types of mesh. So it's not one size fits all by a long shot. So there are tapes for incontinence, and they can go in through two different places. So the challenges of removing these, there are different challenges depending on which tape we're looking at. The mesh that's used for vaginal prolapse is different. It's a larger surface area, and therefore, again, the challenges of full removal and the sequelae of scar tissue formation and poor vaginal function and sexual function after full mesh removal surgery is a real issue. And again, it's just so important that if the mesh is in the wrong place, it's got to be removed. So if it's in the bladder or if it's come through the vaginal skin, there's just no doubt about that. But it's not always clear that symptoms are directly related to the mesh, and therefore that full removal of the mesh is going to sort out the symptoms. And the problem is that we want to deal with the symptoms, we want to make things better as safely and as possibly, and causing as little harm as possible. And as I say, nobody is ever saying that total mesh removal is not ultimately going to be the right thing, but it's certainly in our practice and in our approach, and I think in best practice anywhere, is not necessarily the first port of call. It's actually looking at the issues, looking at what is possibly the causes, excluding mesh, because there can be other causes as well. And we've had several patients who've been referred to us with what were thought to be mesh complications, and they were actually totally unrelated. We've operated on patients where it wasn't the mesh at all. There was previous procedures that had caused problems, and the mesh wasn't the issue at all. So it's a huge area. It is not simple and straightforward. These are complicated procedures. They're complicated solutions. As I say, we aim to treat women as holistically as possible and look at every aspect of their care, their physical care, their sexual care, their pelvic floor care, their mental health. And that's what we're working hard to develop these services and to make them as good as we possibly can, and to keep women as safe as we possibly can. That's first and foremost in our minds. And that's a big concern, because there is a narrative out there that
Dr. Murphy can answer clinical questions.
Let the witness finish, please. Dr. O'Sullivan, really appreciate your giving your time this morning, and thank you for eating into your on-call time as well. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Bart. So.